In the small southern town of Maplewood, where cotton fields stretched as far as the eye could see and segregation was still deeply entrenched, there lived a young boy named Elijah Johnson. Elijah was just 14 years old, with dreams as big as the sky above him. He loved basketball, dreamed of becoming a doctor, and spent most of his days helping his mother at their family-owned grocery store. One summer evening, while walking home from practice, Elijah noticed an elderly white woman struggling to carry her groceries to her car. Being the kind-hearted person he was, Elijah offered to help her. The woman, Mrs. Peterson, thanked him warmly and told him how grateful she was for his kindness. As they parted ways, neither of them imagined that this simple act would change Elijah's life forever. A few days later, Mrs. Peterson reported to the police that someone had stolen $50 from her purse during the brief moment when Elijah had helped her load her groceries into her car. Without any evidence other than her word, the police arrived at Elijah's house late one night, woke up his mother, and arrested him. They didn't bother knocking on doors to ask neighbors if they'd seen anything. They simply assumed Elijah must be guilty because of the color of his skin. Elijah found himself standing before Judge Thomas Whitaker, a man known throughout the county for his harsh sentences and open disdain for black people. Judge Whitaker often made no secret of his beliefs, frequently referring to African Americans as troublemakers and thieves in private conversations that somehow always seemed to leak out to the public. Many believed he used his position of power to uphold the racist status quo, ensuring that black citizens remained second-class citizens in their own hometown. The trial was swift and unfair. Despite the lack of physical evidence linking Elijah to the theft, no fingerprints on Mrs. Peterson's purse, no witnesses who saw him take the money, the prosecution painted Elijah as a liar and a criminal. His defense attorney, a young lawyer fresh out of law school who had been assigned the case pro bono, struggled to mount a convincing argument against the overwhelming bias in courtroom. When it came time for Judge Whitaker to deliver his verdict, he leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "This court has heard the testimony of Mrs. Peterson," he began, his voice dripping with condescension. "And based on a credible account, I find the defendant, Elijah Johnson, guilty of theft." Elijah's heart sank. He glanced over at his mother, who sat in the gallery with tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "It's not fair, it's not fair." Judge Whitaker continued, "Given the severity of the crime and the need to set an example for others in this community, I sentence Elijah Johnson to 6 months in juvenile detention." Court adjourned. As the bailiff led Elijah away in handcuffs, the weight of the judge's decision crushed him. He hadn't done anything wrong. Yet here he was, being punished for a crime he didn't commit. His dreams of becoming a doctor felt impossibly distant now. But Elijah's story didn't end there. Word of the unjust verdict spread quickly through the black community in Maplewood. Local activists, teachers, and church leaders organized protests outside the courthouse, demanding justice for Elijah. A petition calling for a retrial gathered thousands of signatures, including many from white allies who recognized the blatant prejudice in the case. Meanwhile, Elijah's attorney filed an appeal, citing procedural errors and the lack of substantial evidence. Months later, after relentless advocacy and media attention, the higher court overturned the verdict, declaring Elijah innocent. By then, however, the damage had already been done. Elijah had spent nearly half a year behind bars, missing school, losing friends, and enduring the trauma of being labeled a criminal. Yet even in the face of adversity, Elijah refused to let bitterness consume him. With the support of his family and community, he returned to school, graduated top of his class, and eventually fulfilled his dream of becoming a doctor. Years later, he established a free clinic in Maplewood, dedicated to serving those who couldn't afford medical care, a testament to his resilience and unwavering belief in justice and equality. As for Judge Whitaker, his reputation suffered greatly following the exposure of his biased rulings, though he never publicly admitted fault. Pressure from both local and national organizations forced him into early retirement. His legacy became one of cautionary tales about the dangers of unchecked prejudice within the judicial system. Elijah's story served as a powerful reminder that while systemic racism may attempt to silence voices like his, courage, persistence, and unity can overcome even the most oppressive forces. And though the road to true equality remains long and fraught with challenges, every victory, no matter how small, brings us closer to a world where justice truly prevails for all.